For 6 hours, she sat in that courtroom without saying a word. No crying. Don't tell her lawyer anything. There was no reaction when her name was called, when her money problems were made public, or when 27 years of her life were laid out on a table like evidence. Then, the one person she never thought would do it stood up, walked to the witness stand, looked straight at the man they had both loved and lost in different ways, and told the truth that blew the whole case wide open. No one told you this about the Brown family. The show gave you the reasons. The confessionals. The carefully edited version of 4 women who share a man and call it a blessing. But the cameras never went into the room where the real decisions were made. TLC never showed it, and the producers never got it on film. The account that no one knew about. The deal that no one signed. The silence that was bought, kept, and protected for more than 10 years. Up until now. In a Salt Lake City courtroom that smells like old wood and broken promises, all of the Brown family's secrets are about to come back to light. And the woman with the shovel is the last person they all thought would be there. You don't know how this ends if you think you do. Leave a comment right now and tell me which wife you think finally tells the whole truth. I promise that the answer will change how you watched every episode of this show. Before everything changes in a courtroom, there is a certain kind of silence. It's not calm. It's not peaceful. It's the kind of silence that feels heavy, like a hand slowly pushing down on your chest. The lights above hum. The benches creak as people move around nervously. Someone in the front clears their throat and then regrets how loud it sounds right away. The room smells unique. It has a mix of old wood polish, new carpet, and something metallic underneath it all. If anticipation had a smell, it would smell like this. And a woman in the back who has been quietly crying for almost an hour crumples a tissue in her hand and stares at the ceiling, trying to keep herself together with all her strength. That lady is Janelle Brown. If you know anything about Janelle Brown, and you do if you watched Sister Wives for a while, you know that it's not a small thing to see her cry in public. She built her whole life around being the stable one, the one that works. The wife who kept her head down, her mouth shut, and her feelings hidden away like clean laundry in a drawer that no one was allowed to open. Janelle didn't act in scenes. Janelle didn't cry in parking lots or give tearful confessions to cameras at 2 a.m. Janelle Brown lived. That was her talent. That was her present. In a lot of ways, that was her whole personality. But today, on this Tuesday morning in a Salt Lake City courtroom, Janelle Brown is not at all steady. And the reason she is here, along with everyone else, is that a family convinced the whole world that they had something worth admiring. Let's go back. Not too far away. Just far enough to see how a story about love, faith, and TLC reality TV ends up in court with lawyers, sealed financial records, and a judge who looks like she's seen it all but has never seen anything like this. The Browns: Kody, Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Robyn. 4 wives, 1 husband, 18 kids, and a TV show that made them the most famous plural family in American homes. For years, people watched them deal with the complicated choreography of plural marriage, like scheduling conflicts, shared holidays, and the jealousy that was always just below the surface of every polite family dinner. They were dirty. They didn't agree with each other. They were, in their own way, very human. And people loved them for it. There's something very interesting about watching people work hard at something that most people think is impossible. But reality TV has always been good at showing you just enough truth to make you forget how much is being kept from you. Kody Brown acted like the head of a modern, evolved, plural family season after season. He talked about equal love like politicians talk about bipartisanship, with a lot of conviction and very little proof. He talked about dedication, spiritual calling, and how hard and beautiful it is to choose a life that isn't what society expects. And he gave those speeches with the special charm of someone who has told the same story so many times that he now thinks it is history instead of a performance. Until you saw the seasons one after the other. Until you saw the patterns. How his face changed from soft to hard when he was with Robyn and Christine. The way equal love always seemed to lean in one direction in real life. The way promises made on camera slowly disappeared between episodes. By the time the later seasons of the show came out, the Brown family's problems weren't problems anymore. They were fault lines, deep and structural, the kind that don't show themselves until the ground moves. Christine was the first to leave, in front of everyone, on camera, and in pain. Janelle started to pull away like a woman who was quietly closing accounts she didn't need anymore. Meri was in a kind of emotional limbo. She was still married to Kody, but she was functionally alone in a bed and breakfast that she had put all of her savings into. She was holding on to something that had stopped holding her back years before she admitted it. Robyn Brown, the fourth wife, the legal wife, and the one who got the nanny, kept smiling for the cameras and saying all the right things in the middle of it all. After that, Christine sued. And the real story of the Brown family finally came to light. The doors to the courtroom open. The bailiff asks for order. Meri Brown sits in the third row, folds her hands in her lap, closes her eyes for exactly 2 seconds, and gets ready for what she knows is coming. Robyn Brown shows up at the courthouse on the first day of testimony, wearing a dark navy dress and her hair pulled back in a simple way. No rings or earrings. Don't wear a lot of makeup. No accessories that say something. She looks like a woman who wants to be taken seriously in every way. Like a woman who has practiced. Like a woman who has spent a lot of time in front of a mirror figuring out which version of herself needs to walk through those courthouse doors today. And she most likely has. Because Robyn Brown has always understood something that the other wives perhaps didn't, or didn't understand until it was already too late. She has always understood how powerful perception can be. How to read a room before the room reads her. How to make her vulnerability seem real by putting it in the right place. How to make people feel like genuine emotion is coming to the surface when you make planned decisions. It's not really mean. It is more than just being mean. It is the survival intelligence of a woman who learned early on that how she looks is protection. But this is what courtrooms have that TV studios don't. Cross-examination. Sandra Voss, Christine's lawyer, walks up to the witness stand with only a manila folder in her hands. She has the calm confidence of a woman who has never had to prove her competence because it speaks for itself. In the middle of the 40s. Measured. The kind of lawyer who lets the other side think they can get away with something in the first few minutes and then slowly and without drama takes everything apart. She begins slowly. This is on purpose. She asks Robyn to explain the family's finances to the court, including how the money from the TV show was divided, who managed the accounts, and whether all 4 wives had access to joint accounts. Robyn thinks about her answer. Responses that were measured. Sentences that were put together. She talks about shared costs, separate accounts for each household, and Kody keeping an eye on the bigger picture of the family's finances. She says that fairness was always important to the family. In 3 minutes, she says the word fair 4 times. You only notice this kind of thing when you are really paying attention. And Sandra Voss is always paying attention. She lets Robyn finish what she was saying. Slowly nods. After that, she opens the folder. She puts one piece of paper at the edge of the witness stand and asks Robyn if she knows what it is in the same calm voice she has used for everything else. The courtroom gets very quiet. Something flashes across Robyn's face for just a split second, long enough to be sure it's real. Something that isn't calm. Something other than the carefully planned presentation she brought with her. It goes away almost right away. She pulls herself back in a breath. But Sandra Voss did see it. The judge looked at it. The court reporter, who sees everything but doesn't react to anything, stopped her fingers over her keys for half a second. The paper is a record from a bank. More specifically, a series of cross-referenced, annotated bank records, with each entry highlighted in red, showing that money was being moved from the family's joint production account to a separate account that was only in Robyn's name. These transfers started about 2 years before Christine officially left the family. They aren't small. They don't look like the kind of numbers that would be used for regular household management. When you add them all up over 38 months, they come to more than $400,000.
Kody Brown also didn't know that account existed. Robyn's lawyer quickly objects. There is a 4-minute sidebar. The judge looks over the paperwork herself.
And then, in a moment that everyone in the courtroom will remember, she overrules the objection and lets the evidence in. Sandra Voss turns back to Robyn with the patience of someone who knew the decision was coming. She just wants to know if Robyn can explain these transactions. Robyn says she can. She says that Kody gave the go-ahead for each transfer, that the money paid for things around the house that weren't being paid for well enough by the family's regular accounts, that her household needed a certain amount of financial help because it had more children and more complicated daily needs, which the whole family had agreed on. Sandra Voss asks, "Who agreed? Which wives?" That pause lasts for 4 seconds. There is a difference between 4 seconds of silence in a courtroom and 4 seconds of normal silence. It gets longer. It takes up the whole room. It tells you more than the answer that comes after it. Robyn says, "Kody took care of those talks. Did Kody agree to these transfers in writing?" "I think Kody talked to her about it." "Did Kody agree? Yes or no?" Robyn looks at her lawyer, then back. "I'm not sure what Kody said to her." The silence that followed that answer didn't just fill the room. It changed it. You can tell that the temperature is changing. You can tell that the air is getting better. Sandra Voss shuts the folder. She doesn't ask any more questions about that answer. She doesn't have to. She just lets it stay in the record and moves on. Because the worst thing she did was not ask the question. Robyn was allowed to answer it in front of everyone. She shows a second document, then a third. Each one adds to the same quiet, damning story. A family structure that looked fair on TV, but worked like a tiered system behind closed doors. Then, almost as an aside, she asks about the babysitter. In particular, the non-disclosure agreement. Meri Brown makes a sound from 3 rows back. It's so quiet that it's hard to hear, and her hands tighten in her lap. She knows exactly why that NDA is there, and she has been the only one who knows that for a long time. There is a kind of loneliness that doesn't seem like loneliness on the outside. It dresses appropriately. It comes to family dinners, says the right things, and laughs at the right times. It has learned over years of quiet practice how to fill a room without really being there, how to act like you belong so well that even the people closest to you stop questioning whether it's real. It breathes in places where the air is meant to be thin, and tells itself that thin air is still air, and that living on it is the same as living. That is how lonely Meri Brown is. And it has been with her longer than she has ever told anyone, even herself. But the reason it matters right now, in this courtroom, on this specific afternoon, is that Meri Brown has been keeping a secret for 3 years. Something she found by chance in the most normal way. She turned it over in her hands 1,000 times, looking at it from every angle and telling herself it wasn't her place to share it. She thought that sharing it would only make things worse, and that some truths are better kept quiet where they can't hurt anyone. She said a lot of things to herself. She did a great job with that. But Meri Brown had also spent most of the last 25 years telling herself lies, and at some point, she had quietly and privately stopped doing that. Meri had the most difficult job in this courtroom of all the wives. She was still married to Kody in a technical sense. Their spiritual union had never been broken, even though they had gotten a legal divorce that had been framed, carefully and repeatedly, as a matter of administration. A change to the paperwork. A sacrifice made to meet the family's bigger needs, specifically so Kody could legally adopt Robyn's kids from her first marriage. Management. Meri had smiled while she explained. She had nodded in front of the cameras. She talked about sacrifice, trust, and the higher callings of plural family life in a way that seemed like she really meant it. She was good at talking. Years of practice had made her so good with words that they covered up her feelings like new paint covers up old damage, smoothly and convincingly, until the wall behind it started to show through again. The cameras never caught what happened after the interviews, when the crew went home. After the lights went out, the carefully made-up Meri Brown was able to go to bed. Nothing happened. She built a bed and breakfast with her own money and hard work, and she needed something that was truly hers, something that couldn't be moved, redirected, or quietly changed into someone else's name while she was told to trust the process. And it was at that bed and breakfast, in the most normal way possible, that Meri and Bethany's paths crossed. They had met at a public event. Short talk. Recognizing each other. Two people who had never met before were moving through the same orbit. That day, they went their separate ways. But there was something about the way Bethany looked at Meri that stuck with her. Not with pity, which Meri was used to and had learned how to deal with very well. With something that makes more sense. The look of someone who knows more than they say and sees someone else who knows the same. A few weeks later, Bethany got in touch with me privately. And what she said during that talk changed something basic about how Meri thought about the last 10 years of her life. Bethany had been Robyn's nanny for 3 years. She had signed a nondisclosure agreement, which isn't common for household workers in private family settings. This should have raised questions as soon as it came up in today's testimony, and it clearly did, judging by the response in the gallery. But NDAs have certain legal limits. They can't legally make someone hide proof of financial wrongdoing. In a civil case, they can't stop a witness from talking. They can make someone feel like talking could have too many bad effects for a long time. Bethany had felt that way before. She had been careful with what she knew for 3 years, like you would be with something fragile, always aware of how easily it could break and how much damage it could do. What she said to Meri wasn't just about the money. It was about how the money was talked about. The way the transfers were explained to Kody's own household was completely different from what the other wives had been told before. It wasn't a matter of administration. It wasn't a choice made by the family. It was a planned structure of misdirection, built over years, room by room. And Meri, who was sitting in that bed and breakfast and listening to Bethany talk, knew exactly what that meant, with the kind of clarity that only comes after a long time of almost understanding. It meant that the story she had been told wasn't the real story. It meant that none of the things she had been told would be honored. Her loyalty, her silence, her patience, or her willingness to make herself smaller so the family could work. The family didn't need her to be small. They just found it easier that way. Sandra Voss's voice from the morning session is still ringing in her ears. The NDA issue. Robyn's short break. Robyn's calmness had flickered like a light in a storm, but only for a second, and only once. Meri is sitting 3 rows back, completely still, with her hands folded in her lap. In 3 days, she will have to testify. She got her subpoena 6 weeks ago, and she hasn't said anything publicly about what she plans to say. Kody's team has assumed, because it's easier to do so, that Meri's loyalty is strong enough to last. They have confused loyalty with endurance. People have made that mistake with Meri Brown before, and it has never turned out well. Christine's lawyer walks past Meri's row during the afternoon break without stopping, making eye contact, or acknowledging her in any way. Instead, he quietly sets a small card on the bench next to her. A name. A number. Meri grabs it, grips it with both hands. And behind her carefully planned face, a decision that has been coming together for 3 years finally comes together. Quietly. Experienced lawyers will tell you that there are times in courtrooms when the whole case changes, not little by little, not by adding more. Like a building whose foundation has been slowly hollowed out for months, and then one morning, without warning, the whole thing just goes. The walls don't fall down in a big way, they just stop working. And everyone inside can feel it happen before they can see it. This is one of those times. Up until now, Kody Brown has been very calm on the stand. And that calmness is not nothing. Kody is not the kind of person who can sit still. He is a man made for living rooms and cameras, and for passionate, chest-forward declarations that sound great when there are sympathetic editors between his words and the audience. There are no editors in courtrooms. There are transcripts, objections, and opposing lawyers in courtrooms who have read everything you have ever said in public and spent 9 months trying to figure out how far those words are from the truth. Douglas Fitch has done a great job. You can see the coaching in Kody's body language, the calmness, the slow pace, and the thoughtful pauses that show he is thinking about what he is saying instead of avoiding it. He has talked about his family in a way that sounds like love. He has admitted to mistakes in a careful, vague way that shows he is human without taking responsibility. He has built the image of a flawed but honest man who did his best in a very complicated situation, brick by brick. It is a good show. Maybe his best. But Sandra Voss hasn't spent 9 months getting ready for this case to be handled by a good performance. Kody Brown is about to remember that. She begins with the money transfers. She lets him tell his whole story, including the family money, Robyn's household's greater needs, his fair intentions, and how hard it is to manage 4 families under one financial umbrella. She lets him finish what he was saying. She writes it down. She nods as if she is thinking about what he said. Then she moves. She wants to know about the contract for production. Who exactly signed it? For the family. Whose name was at the top of the agreement that set the rules for how the Brown family's story would be told, shared, and paid for? Kody says that his name was the main one on the document. She wants to know if the wives had their own contracts or if they were all covered by the same family agreement. He says it was set up like a family agreement. She wants to know if the wives had their own lawyers during those talks. His answer changes texture here, but only a little. Just the right amount. "We worked together as a family," he says. "They had faith in me to take care of it." Did Christine Brown have the choice to hire her own lawyer before she agreed to be on the show? I don't remember that being a specific talk. Sandra Voss puts a paper on the stand. An email from the production company to Christine in 2012. One line is highlighted in yellow to tell Christine that she might want to talk to a lawyer who isn't connected to the case before signing. Did anyone tell Christine what rights she might have given up by not doing that? Douglas Fitch doesn't agree. Not allowed. "I thought everyone knew what was going on," Kody says. And here Sandra Voss does something that quietly breaks my heart. She doesn't fight. She doesn't push. She just goes on to the next document, which shows Janelle's household expenses during the same time as the transfers in neat columns that make it clear how different they are. Then there was a third document. Kody and his financial manager are talking about Robyn's account in emails that are careful in a way that only matters when you have something to be careful about. She then puts the fourth document on the stand. It's a message. Written 3 years before Christine left. 2 lines long. Christine had been taking care of their daughter Isabel's scoliosis surgery on her own, but Kody's response to Christine's written request for money to pay for it was that it was a serious, painful condition that needed a lot of medical help. His whole response made it seem like she should look into other options. 2 lines. $400,000 quietly went into a different account. Sandra Voss says the date out loud. She reads his answer out loud. She doesn't write opinion pieces. She doesn't have to. Then, something happens to Kody Brown's face that no amount of coaching, preparation, or instinct for performance could have stopped. Kody Brown is looking at the date on that email. He is doing the math right now, taking into account the date of Christine's request, the dates of the transfers, and the time difference between what he told her and what he was doing at the same time. And no matter what wall he put up between those two realities, or what story he told himself to make them work together without conflict, it isn't working anymore. His jaw gets tight. His eyes go down to the paper. And for the first time since he took the stand, Kody Brown looks like a man who is not in charge of a situation, but is actually in one. Douglas Fitch is already getting ready to object, but it's too late for objections to mean anything here. The damage isn't the issue. The damage is in Kody's face as he reads those 2 lines he wrote about his daughter's back in the same month that the transfers sped up. He says in a very low voice, so low that the court reporter has to lean forward a little, "I didn't handle that well." The courtroom becomes completely, totally still. This is the first time in 2 days of testimony that it seems completely unscripted. Not managed. Genuinely human in a way that no amount of coaching can fake. And ironically, it's also the worst thing he said, since it's an admission in the form of an understatement. Not, "I was wrong," not, "I made a mistake," but something worse, in some way. Something that makes it seem like he knows exactly what he's talking about and is using the fewest words possible to say it. Sandra Voss lets the silence stay. She doesn't hurry into it, doesn't make it sharper or better. She just stands there while those 4 words, "I didn't handle that well," settle into the record like something that will last forever. Then she says in a low voice, "No, you didn't." Then she goes back to her table. Christine Brown is sitting perfectly straight in the 3rd row, with her hands folded and an unreadable expression on her face. A single tear was running down her left cheek in silence. Not done, not timed. This is just the woman's natural reaction after years of asking to be seen and finally seeing the man who didn't see her run out of ways to say otherwise in public.